You're listening to Pombo and Peter's Picks, the home of your favorite sports betting podcast, presented by The Daily Goat.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Pombo and Peter's Picks. I'm Jason Pombo alongside Peter Alves. Peter, how you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm pretty hyped for this episode.
Yeah, me too. Very exciting episode for Patriots fans especially. We are lucky and fortunate to have Mike Dussault of Patriots.com to be the guest for this particular episode. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. Draft, here it comes. Let's get excited, right?
Oh, yeah. Very exciting time of year. It's probably the NFL offseason. It has really grown and expanded over the last, 5-10 years. And not going to lie, it gets exciting every year. And the draft, arguably the best time of the year.
Yeah, it's like Christmas, right? You get a bunch of new toys to play with. And we get to open our presents in a couple of weeks. I mean, I got to say, I do miss the old draft when it was just like all day Saturday, and you could kind of enjoy that. But I've gotten used to it now with these late nights of, luckily the Patriots are middle of the first round. So hopefully they'll make a pick and we don't have to wait till 11:30 at night to find out that they're not even making a day one selection.
Yeah. And then you're waiting for like nothing. You're like, oh, really?
It's the worst.
So Mike, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us what you do at Patriots.com. Just tell us a little bit about your history, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I took a strange route to this. I started my own Patriots blog. I was, back when the internet was kind of going sports crazy and, the mid 2000s, I got passionate about it and found that I loved writing about the team. And so I wrote about the team, through various outlets before I started Pat's Propaganda. And that was in 2010 that I started it. So, yeah, I wrote for, about 12 years online until opportunity came up at Patriots.com to be a content producer. And at that point, I had pretty much established that I was a person who followed the Patriots very, I don't know if they say thoroughly, but passionately, I guess. And so, yeah, it lined up. And so for the last coming up on 2 years, I've been a content producer for Patriots.com. So writing, as well as appearing on Patriots Unfiltered. We do draft shows. And, I produced another show called Pat's Cast, which is a live thing on Facebook. And I've been working on a project this offseason, which I can tease a little bit. I've been talking to a lot of the guys from 2001, their team, and doing a bunch of interviews, former coaches, players, management as well. So that's just something I'm working on this offseason that'll be dropping this fall. Kind of a new look back at the 2001 season, some fresh perspectives, and gotten some great stories. So I'm excited about that project too. So anything to do with the Patriots, I'm your man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you kind of teased your project coming up for the 2001 Patriots, and I know they have their own like Twitter page that you guys have going on, and I think that's just so cool. Just a pretty good back to memory lane. Just how you was like, what is it?
Patriots Time Machine.
Patriots Time Machine. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a Twitter account that's basically recounting the 2001 season as if it was happening now. So I think we just re-signed Jermaine Wiggins maybe today.
I think so.
So very exciting. But yeah, it's fun. And obviously, with the 20th anniversary, which just seems crazy to me, we're trying to pull up the stops and kind of do some good reflecting on that season.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's get to the present now. So let's start off with the Patriots quarterback situation. Obviously, that's a big story coming up, especially with the NFL draft coming. The Patriots obviously re-signed Cam Newton this offseason. Jarrett Stidham is still on the roster. What do you make of their current quarterback situation?
Yeah, it's not confidence inspiring. I hate like no excuses. Like I do think that Cam Newton was in a tough situation last year. Now, I think there are some excuses, just to an extent. I'm not going to say that I'm expecting him to come in and, be the 2015 Cam Newton again. But I think other than what was actually on the field, his performance was, wasn't great, but otherwise I think it was accountable and, it's just, there were a lot of things going on. So, I know it's such a big question trying to get the quarterback, and that's really, that kind of hovers over everything that the Patriots are doing right now. And, I think when you look at all the options that were out there and the choices that they had, given what they gave Cam Newton, I know he's going to come in and compete. I know there was some talk of, people not showing up for OTAs that started today. He's there. So, you knew you were going to get that leadership and that kind of commitment from him. Will that translate into more wins in 2021? I have to be convinced, but I also think that unfortunately the Patriots are just too low in the draft that I can't really see them going up to fourth or, that seems crazy. Third or fourth. I just, that seems too much to me for given what we know about them. So I think they're going to kind of roll with Newton and hopefully they can get maybe a guy in day 2 to kind of develop behind him. And, if it's not going great, maybe we could see that rookie sooner or later. Maybe Jarrett Stidham shows something else in his third year. I mean, I don't think he's gotten a full chance really. Thought he threw the ball really well last year early in camp. And, for the first few days, I was like, man, he looks good. He's getting the ball out. He seems to understand what he's doing. And then he had that injury and things went sideways from there. So, it's hard. That's the biggest question. And I think that question is, what's going to determine what kind of team the Patriots are this year, what kind of play they get from the quarterback position.
So do you think they're out of the trading market of like Jimmy Garoppolo and stuff?
Yeah.
That's a plan A all along,
I mean, Garoppolo, I get it. Everybody, that he's the one who got away, right? Like, Bill wanted him and, he does what we love. And if he could just stay healthy and he's got to stay healthy at some point, right? So I get it. But I also, I have trouble seeing San Francisco moving on right now. And, you figure if they're not going to get Trevor Lawrence, obviously they're probably not going to get Zach Wilson. The rest of those guys probably need a little time to develop anyway. So, I'm talking about the other 3 top quarterbacks. So I wouldn't totally rule it out. I think maybe, if you get to 8 with Carolina, maybe that spot, if Fields or I think Fields is going to go at 3, but, if Fields were to fall or Lance, I mean, Lance is probably my like just overall the guy that seems to fit the best. And I do like Mac Jones too. I just, I think like everybody got some questions about him, but I think those 2 guys really fit what they do. Love to get them. I just, it's going to take a lot.
Yeah. Trey Lance was your number 1 top 50.
Yeah. And that's based on Fields probably going, so there's got to be some kind of, I don't put Trevor Lawrence on, I've been doing the draft boards for a while, so it's tough. I mean, I really like Justin Fields. I think he's going to be a real good player. And I mean, I kind of took it as not putting him on the board as the ultimate compliment to him. Nothing against Trey Lance, but I just do think, I mean, if I put Fields and Lance 5 years down the road in the Patriots system, I think, my opinion would be, I think Lance might have a little bit of a higher ceiling in terms of, what they like, what they want from their quarterbacks. I could see him kind of checking their boxes a little bit better, but hey, we'll take what we can get at this point. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you think Justin Fields is going to go 3rd overall. So that's a little bit different compared to what most analysts are saying, what most mock drafts are portraying. So do you think the Mac Jones stuff is kind of smoke?
I do. I mean, I think that they're considering him as well, but, and I don't want to totally rule that out. I mean, I know, I was just listening to a conference call today with Gil Brandt and Mark Dominic, who's a former GM, and one of them said, I think Fields is going 3rd. And the other one said Mac Jones is going 3rd. So I think a lot of people are kind of split on those. For me, when I look at them side by side and I just see the full package from Fields, that I just have trouble being like, do they really like accuracy and intangibles that much to pass on him? San Francisco, that's a little bit of a struggle for, maybe they will. But I just think when I look at the 2 players, I'm like, man, Fields seems to pop off he can make every throw down the field outside the numbers. Lots to like about Mac Jones, but I just think Fields is, his athleticism that puts him a little bit over the top for me.
Yeah, and they're 2 totally different kinds of players. Obviously, you highlighted the accuracy for Mac Jones, and I think that's probably his strongest attribute. Now, Belichick was obviously present at his pro day. He was not present at Justin Fields' pro day. Do you read into that at all, or do you think that's kind of just,
Yeah, I usually don't read too much into it. I mean, they've got scouts everywhere. They got McDaniels was, at one of them. That was at Fields' last week. They have a contingent again today at Trey Lance's that includes Dave Ziegler and Elliot Wolf. So, I know that they're getting around. It's just, it's funny because it's like on one hand, people, big talking point is like, oh, Belichick can't draft and he needs to listen to everybody else. But then when he doesn't show up at something, people are like, well, why isn't he there? Well, you don't want him to draft anyway. Aren't you happy that the scouts that you want making all the decisions are there? So I don't know. I mean, I think, he always pops up. I think it's such a funny thing to me. It's like, the season usually ends and then like 2 weeks later, he's at Middle Tennessee State working out some, random guy. So he pops up. I know. I mean, I think him showing up at Alabama was probably as much about Nick Saban as it was about Mac Jones, but he's always on the circuit. I know they got plenty of guys out there. It seems like they've really are kind of dividing things up well. So I don't read too much into it, but it's always funny how things just kind of are always going in a circle.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I know a lot of people like to make something out of nothing, like, oh, he wasn't there, yada yada.
Yeah, he shook his head at one of the Mac Jones. He was like,
Yeah.
oh, he doesn't like him at all.
That's it. Take him off the board. But like, people are just like, what are you just not going to watch the film for last year, the year before? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I understand the value of pro days, especially without the combine. But nonetheless, if you're going to get most of your grasp, you're going to look on tape.
Yeah,
and
for
people
sure. And I mean,
always like complain that like he's on vacation and not like really paying attention. It's like, come on.
the guy loves football, right? Like everyone knows that, right? I mean, I don't know. I just that it's everybody wants to have their points to talk about, but yeah, I mean, how much is Bill Belichick going to learn by watching a guy throwing shorts that he's not already going to know?
Yeah, I think it's a whole lot of nothing. So you pretty much highlighted the top guys. Obviously, you like Trey Lance, Mac Jones. You talked a little about Justin Fields. How about any of the day 2 to day 3 guys? Is anyone there that kind of sticks off the page to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with everybody. I mean, I think consensus is now kind of building around Kellen Mond as, maybe the day 2 guy that fits best, just, simply based on he's got the size. He played a lot of games in the SEC, and I think he can, make all the throws and like all these guys. I mean, I think it's consistency is going to be the issue for everybody. I think all of them have their share of good throws and other throws that they might like to have back. I've really, to plug, JT O'Sullivan, former NFL quarterback's got a great YouTube channel, and he's just been breaking down all the quarterbacks this year. So I feel like I've got like a real actual sense of the quarterbacks better than I have in the past, just because I've, put on his YouTube pages, and he walks you through film and, shows you all, I can pop on film and I maybe a little bit know what I'm looking, but, he's showing you everything good and bad. So I watched a lot of everybody, and so I think when you talk about Davis Mills, that's, I'm like, I see it, it's like one good throw, one horrible throw, that kind of stuff. And, and after that, Jamie Newman too, I think that's kind of the group. I don't know, Ian Book, Sam Ellinger, those guys, it feels like those guys are probably going to be late round, undrafted, maybe a backup. But I think for the people that we're talking about that want to get us excited about, like, hey, maybe this could be the next guy. I'd say Mond, Newman, Davis Mills, maybe, depending on how he kind of develops. But everybody's got questions. I mean, even the guys at the top got questions. So those are 3 that kind of stand out for me. Not a huge Trask guy. I've seen, I think it was Doug Farrar talk about, like, when you don't like a guy, you try to watch more of him to find out why you don't. And, I just think I think he's not mobile. I think he's heavy footed, and, not that that's necessarily a deal breaker, but I don't know. I haven't really fallen in love with him. I know he's a guy that some Patriot guys like.
Yeah. Kyle Trask, to me personally, at the beginning of the college football season, that was kind of the guy I was like, well, maybe he's going to be, I don't know, a top 15 pick. I thought that could be someone they could look at. But it seems like he's pretty much fallen to the wayside. I know McDaniels was present at his pro day. Again, we just talked about it, take a grain of salt, obviously. But I think that's somebody that they would have to move up for, because obviously they don't hold a second round pick. So he seems like that guy that they would have to move up for. Same thing with, I think, Newman and Kellen Mond.
Yeah, they're. I mean, it's a weird spot, and that's why I think when you talk about, like, could they trade down from 15, and maybe fill in the gap. I mean, what I'm enamored with are the day 2 wide receivers. Those are the guys that are like, man, this is what we need. There's a bunch of them. It's like, give me any of them. There, you can go right down the list of those guys, which I'm sure you're ready to chat about. But that's what I'm kind of enamored by. But like you said, it's that big hole from 15, all the way to their second round pick. It's just, there's so many good fits and guys in there that if they did trade down, that's what I'd be consoling myself with.
So, like, other than quarterback, what do you think their biggest positional need is? Do you think it's wide receiver? Even though they signed, no.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the biggest need. I mean, I do think it's a need. I think that they, especially, with Edelman retiring, I mean, you don't replace Edelman, but I do think it's a need, especially long term. But I would probably look at cornerback and tackle right now as the 2 positions that are have nothing next year. They're both Gilmore and JC Jackson are supposed to be entering the last years of their deal. I don't know how that's all going to work out. I could still see either one of those guys, potentially being some kind of deal, because really they're some of their only real chess pieces to move, I think, that have any value. So I'd keep an eye on those 2, but that's why I think, like, when you look at 15, that's a cornerback's a position. One of those 3 top corners is going to be there, and probably not Surtain, because it seems, he blew things up at his combine. He moved up. JC Horn blew. And I think he's the guy that a lot of Patriots fans like. And after his pro day, it seems like JC Horn is flying up, and that might drop Caleb Farley. And I think all 3 of those guys are good man coverage cornerbacks that can play press. and would fit what they do. And the same thing with tackle, both those guys, I mean, when injury questions, Trent Brown was great that year he was here at left tackle, but he's, had 2 injury years as well. I think he's only had 2 seasons in his career that he's played all 16 games. So definitely some questions at tackle too. Not that I'm holding out hope that Rashawn Slater is going to be there at 15, but Christian Darrisaw, maybe somebody like that they might like at that point. But I kind of see those as the biggest needs right now, at least as far as how the draft lines up. Not a great defensive front class. Certainly some linebackers you like too, but I think if you had to really judge on what do they need right now, and when I say right now, I mean next year, who's going to have to step in and really be a starter? I'd probably start there, cornerback and tackle.
Yeah, and they're both free agents after this year, unless they pick up Isaiah Wynn's option.
Yeah, I agree with that. In terms, I like J.C. Horn personally, the corner from South Carolina.
Yeah.
He's the guy I kind of gravitate towards. Now, will he be there? Again, that's a big question mark. I think a lot of that depends on what the teams up front look like. Is there a trade down? Do the receivers go quick? Like what's going to happen with that? But I like him. Another guy I'm kind of hoping for, a linebacker, Micah Parsons from Penn State. He's one that I feel like would be a perfect fit with the Patriots scheme defensively. I think he can play inside. I know he can play outside. He can do a plethora of different things. Hightower's obviously getting up there in age. Van Noy, granted, he's back. Sure. Chase Winovich, I don't know how I feel about him going forward personally, but I think Micah Parsons would be a perfect fit. But I feel like hoping he falls seems like a pipe dream. But I don't know.
Somebody's got to fall. Somebody's got to fall, right? I mean, like of Slater, or like you said, Horn, or one of those guys. It seems they have to. But yeah, I mean, Parsons is. He seems like usually the mock drafts kind of evolve over time, and you have free agency, and that changes things. But Parsons has been pretty consistent. You look at mock drafts, he pops up probably more than anybody. And I agree with, everything you said. They need linebackers, they're getting older there. I like Van Noy coming back. I was really surprised by that. Not sure what Uche, Jennings, Winovich, what is their long-term. I'd love to give them time to develop. I don't want to, continue to just throw in edge guys and push them down the block. But like you said, I think Parsons is like every Patriots linebacker, but maybe faster. And that's what they need, is that like speed at the second level. And the guy that I'd probably go right behind him is Zaven Collins, who, probably more of that mold of Hightower and maybe not quite as fast as Parsons, but has the size that we're used to seeing them draft. So there's certainly one scenario in my head I could see they trade down and they take Zaven Collins, especially if Parsons, if Horn, if the guys that we're talking about are gone. I mean, there's certainly, I'm sure you guys run mock drafts and, it's kind of see, hey, what happens this time? And sometimes you get there and you're like, there's nobody here in the next 5 picks I really have to have. So, I mean, I could see that, but no question. I mean, I'd be doing backflips if they were to get Parsons or Collins. Either one of those guys fit great and would really help the defense at the second level.
Yeah, I agree with you. In terms of Parsons, I mean, we're going to just hope for the best on that particular front. But like you mentioned, somebody has to fall. All these guys can't get picked in front, especially with the receivers, the quarterback run.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to fall through. Now, the question is, if someone like that falls, I don't know, to 10 to 12, does Belichick consider moving up a couple spots? Could that be in play? I know we talked about trading down, which I think is in play, but is trading up for someone that's not a quarterback in play?
Well, I think that's a good question. And I mean, Belichick brought that exact thing up when he did his pre-draft call last week on Thursday. He said, you never know how, and usually he said, we do simulations, and he's like, and it never works out the way you simulate it. But he made the same point. He said, you never know who's going to fall, and it's always somebody random. And, when you get to that point, 10, 11, 12, is that worth having a conversation? So I wouldn't rule it out. Especially, I think Dallas is at 10. I think that's an interesting spot. It's not like it's going to cost you multiple first round picks to get up that high. So I'd be for it. I just think if they're going to do it, maybe it's got to be the quarterback. I don't know. I mean, as much as I like JC Horn, do you trade up to 10 to get JC Horn? That's where I start to question it. Slater, do you go up to 10 to get an offensive tackle? So I don't know. I have trouble convincing myself that they do it for a non-quarterback. I mean, if it's a quarterback, absolutely, I'd go up and get any of those guys.
So I don't mean to pivot back to the quarterback too much, but do you think if it's past 9, you look to trade up?
Yeah, I
if
mean,
Denver
even
doesn't
eight.
take one?
I mean, I would say 8 Carolina, right? You know, I mean, and that's a spot that I could see it. I mean, you got to jump. I mean, Denver could certainly. They're there today at Trey Lance's pro day as well. So, you know, I feel like that's kind of the stop point. You know, I don't think any of those quarterbacks are getting by 9, which is crazy. But again, as you said, you know, that's going to 5 picks of the top 10 are going to be quarterbacks. It's going to push somebody down. I mean, maybe it's Jalen Waddle. I don't know, you know, but there could certainly be a top 10 guy there at 15 or, you know, or like you said, maybe 12, you know, maybe it's worth trading up to 12 to get Waddle, somebody like that. So I think everything will be on the table, but I'm with you guys. I think if it's probably most likely that they would trade down than anything else.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm okay with that. I know a lot of fans are going to be disgruntled about it. That's fine. But I think in this particular situation, you talked about the receivers, right? They don't have a second round pick. I know a lot of people thought maybe you can move Gilmore for a second round pick, but that didn't come to fruition. And I think Gilmore's here for the 2021 season. Moving down would ensure that, I don't know, you get some sort of draft capital in the middle of the draft, which I think you can find some gems, like you mentioned at receiver, whether you like one of the quarterbacks like Davis Mills or whoever else. I think the middle of the draft will be key.
Yeah, and it always is, you know, and I just think, you know, there's been a lot made of the roster spots, and I think they're down to 76 right now. So they got, you know, whatever it is, 14 spots. And, you know, usually they draft 9 or 10 and they sign 9 or 10. So interesting point, you know, Gil Brandt's conference call that I was listening to today was, you know, he said, we've got about a third of the eligible draft prospects that we usually have right now. So that's going to force a lot of low round guys up the draft boards. And it's probably not going to be much in terms of undrafted rookies. So I think the Patriots then, it's not as like constricting as I might have thought it was if it was a regular draft with the full amount of prospects and they, you know, only had 10, 11, 12 spots. It's like, wow, you know, they really need to hit on some guys. But I think the middle rounds is where you got to continue to build. I mean, let's, you know, be honest that the last few drafts, they haven't, you know, built enough up, and they need to really start hitting on some of those picks. And for as good as free agency was, you know, for us to get all these guys in, you know, they need to continue to build for the draft. I think the only way for them to get back into, you know, being a top ranked NFL team and you know, consistently competing for championships is through the draft.
Yeah, I know you just mentioned free agency. I just want to pivot towards that quickly. Were you surprised that they spent all that money? Like, what were your main thoughts? Because I mean, it kind of took me aback, especially with a couple of them anyway. The Hunter Henry, and I think it was the second day of free agency. That's when I was like, wow.
Yeah, because they like never spend unless it was like Stephon Gilmore like the first day. But
yeah, well, I mean, that was the thing. Like going in, you knew they had a bunch of cap space, and so you knew something's going to happen. You know, and I think a lot of people were speculating that, you know, all right, it's going to be, you know, a few guys, like, you know, a few really big impact guys. And I think what we all kind of underestimated was that the market was going to be real low. There weren't going to be a lot of people competing with the Patriots on a lot of these offers. And so they were able to kind of, you know, get even more bang for their buck. So the amount of moves they made, I mean, they run the gamut. I mean, of you know, bringing back Ted Karras, bringing back Kyle Van Noy. I mean, those were, you know, that just was like, what did they just spend a year in Miami and now they're back with what is going on? You know, and I thought that the additions to the front seven, you know, not even to mention, I mean, bringing Lawrence Guy back, which I saw is just kind of like, well, you got to, that was almost like, you know, 5 or 6 days afterwards, like that they actually made that move. So, you know, Godchow and Henry Anderson, who I think everybody kind of like felt like, oh, that guy's a perfect Patriot. And I mean, listening to him talk, I said it sounded like he just came off like the Patriots conveyor belt, like he just had been spit out by the Belichick machine. Or like, where has this guy been? But, you know, and I mean, the receivers, the 2 tight ends, I mean, you know, you completely change all the weaponry. And, you know, for everybody that's been complaining about lack of weapons, it gives you something maybe to, you know, consider with Cam and having those 2 tight ends. I mean, I hope that they're able to, you know, do as much with them as they were able to do earlier with 2 tight ends and, you know, assigning the 2 receivers and the 2 tight ends, it takes some of the pressure off for needing Edelman, that third kind of receiver, that slot guy who comes on. I mean, you know, I'm assuming they're going to be mostly a, you know, 2 tight end team.
So all those moves, who do you like the best?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's like, I don't want to say Devon Godchow because that's like the most boring answer ever, but I love that. Like, I just felt that's what they needed. You know, I felt like they needed a bunch of guys up front that they just got pushed around last year. And I mean, granted, you look at the roster now and it's like, geez, it was like practice squad guys and, you look at it in retrospect of what this roster is shaping up to be versus what that roster was. And it's like that, what was that? What were we watching? Who were those guys? Like a JV team, so to get a guy like Godchow in here, and pairing him with Anderson and bringing Guy back, it's like, all right, now we actually have a defensive front that can get us to third down. Cause I thought last year they got run all over and, they couldn't really play to the strengths of guys like Winovich and Uche, who are, kind of pass rush specialists. So I'm a nerd. I like those. I like those additions. Judon. I mean, at the front seven guys, it was just like, wow. All right. We got a legit front seven again, which was just, that's what made it seem weird. But I really like Kendrick Bourne too, just as a guy, seems really excited to be here. And, all these guys, we heard from them in interviews and stuff. And it's like, all right, guys, like, you're Patriots now. Like, you're not like watching the Patriots. Like, you have to come and do what all those other Patriots did. So I just hope all those guys are able to buy in and not be so wide eyed of like, I'm a Patriot, that, they can really assimilate into the system and produce like guys have in the past.
Yeah. You mentioned the front seven, and I thought that was probably the biggest issue. They could not, run defense, they just couldn't stop anyone. I think that was a huge problem. They addressed that right away. And I think that was a great decision by Belichick to address that. For me, anyway, personally, a little bit more flashier. I like Nelson Aguilar. I know nobody else does, it feels like. I feel like I'm alone on this one, but look, you can move him around. He can play the slot. He can play the outside. He had a career high last year with the Vegas Raiders. Obviously, when it comes to yards per reception, receiving yards, touchdowns, he was awesome in that Vegas offense. And now he's obviously one of the fastest receivers in the NFL. He's quick, can do a plethora of different things. I think they can move him around. I like that fit. I like Kendrick Bourne too. And again, I like the tight ends. How could you not like Jonnu Smith, 26 years old? Feels like the sky's the limit there. I just think overall, you look at this free agent group, and I think, Peter, I know we were talking about this before we started, bringing back David Andrews, bringing back James White, Lawrence Guy, those culture guys was vital because, look, Edelman's not there anymore. Brady's not there. You got to show the Patriot way somehow. And I think bringing back those guys was pivotal.
Yeah, I like David Andrews just on the contract alone. Like, I was really surprised when I read that. Like 4 years, like 21 million or something like that.
Yeah, I think David Andrews probably underestimated the market like we did. I think he probably it would seem like early on they're having conversations, and then it was like, doesn't look like it. People were saying goodbye to him on social media, and then, oh, he's back. So I think, he kind of had a similar reaction to what we did, just didn't quite expect it to be as, sparse as it was. But I think you made a good point, Jason, just about, all these free agent guys, they're all like 26, like it isn't like, usually when you talk about free agent misfires, it's like, oh, we're going to go get JJ Watt. He's 34 and we're going to hope that we get 2 all-pro years out of it, and that feels like, just a remedy, that like that's not going to make the team the way you want. I think you got to go these younger guys. Certainly you've got some with 4-year deals. Aguilar's a 2-year deal, but before they gave Aguilar that contract, everybody was saying what a great fit Aguilar's always been here. Everybody, I think when he was coming out, everybody kind of looked at him more like that Edelman slot role. And, it's bizarre because then it's like he goes to Oakland, he becomes Vegas, he becomes a deep threat. And then we paid him way too much money. It's like, dude, you've been complaining about no weapons forever. And now we paid a receiver that has been a great fit here forever. We paid him too much for you. You're like that's where you tap out. You don't want that anymore. So, again, everything, it's always,
you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
And you look at the deal, it's $11 million guaranteed. Cap's obviously going to go up next year. It's, again, like you mentioned, it's a 2-year deal. It's not like they locked this guy in 4 years, $50 million. Yeah. Like, I think people need to slow down on that one, especially.
Yeah.
I think he can make an impact. I guess we'll see about that. In terms of the tight ends now, we haven't really talked about Hunter Henry. Do you think there's more upside with him or Jonnu Smith going forward?
Upside to probably go Henry, but I think, if I had to kind of predict how it would go, I feel like Jonnu Smith might be kind of like the more down in, down out, reliable kind of guy. He just struck me as an extremely serious football dude, which I love. There's plenty of them on the Patriots roster, Dante Hightower being one, Kyle Duggar being another, guys that you're just like, man, this guy is like intense about football. And that's what they love. And, when you get a guy like that they've found a good one. So, I just hope Hunter Henry can stay healthy. He's had some injury issues, but, I think in terms of if he is able to really live up to his billing, I think he could really, do some damage. The guy's he's so athletic for his size. It's, almost surprising to watch him. And I just hope that they're able to, get them the ball and, just resurrect that position after 2 years. It's been totally dead.
Yeah, that position's been a no-show. Obviously, Aussie didn't do much last year. Dalton Keene barely got on the field. So for those guys going forward, do you think they're just completely out of the mix? Do they try to transition Keene into I don't know, kind of like a Swiss Army knife, put him in the slot, fullback? Or what do you think with that?
Yeah,
Are
I
they
think
totally done?
no. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think Keene is a pure fullback anyway. Or sorry, a tight end anyway. So I think you're right. I mean, I think he's more of an H back, and I mean, it's not going to be easy for him. But I don't necessarily see this as being Keene's death sentence. I mean, I think for him, it's gonna come down to how does he compete against Matt Lacoste? How does he compete against Jakob Johnson? How does he compete against Danny Vitale? If all those guys are still in the mix when they get there, but I think he's got enough to his game that he's the kind that's like he'll find a way. Asiasi probably just has to embrace the third tight end role right now. And, like I said, Hunter Henry does have some injury issues. So I don't necessarily think it's a death sentence for Asiasi, who, really started to show some things last year at the end, had a couple nice catches, I think a touchdown there in the last game. He had a really trying season too, personal loss, the COVID as a rookie. So I wouldn't totally rule him out, but there's no question. You went out, you signed 2 tight ends. Were they going to go out and sign 2 tight ends in 2011 after, they saw Gronk and Hernandez for? No, they were like, we love these guys. They're going to be, so I don't think it's like a vote of confidence by any means for Devin Asiasi that they did that. But I also don't think that, it's necessarily the end. It's just, I think it goes back to guys like Julian Edelman. It's stay healthy, stay on the field, be ready for your chance. Just because the depth chart looks a certain way in mid-April doesn't mean that's how it's going to look in mid-October. And they could still very much need you.
Yeah, as you alluded to earlier, though, it just shows that how bad. Well, maybe not how bad, but like how they haven't hit on anybody in the mid-round.
Yeah, I mean, and they kind of neglected it too.
Yeah.
I mean, other than last year, I thought maybe they saw something in Lacoste 2 years ago to give him 2 years, and then he was hurt the whole year, and then he opted out last year. And he's another one. I don't totally rule it out. I mean, but it's just they didn't get anything out of the position, and it's funny because in the early dynasty it was like a joke of how many tight ends they had and drafted. And all they do is draft tight ends. So it's nice to have some good depth at that position now.
Yeah, it was weird. As soon as Gronk departed, they were in the mix for obviously Jared Cook, and then Gronk decided to hang it up, and they missed out on Jared Cook. So everyone knows what happened with that. But after that, it seems like they just completely neglected it. Ben Watson, he came in here, obviously older, couldn't really have much left. So it's refreshing to see it. Yeah, exactly. Izzo, same thing.
Yeah, it's been a black hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
so
bringing in these 2 guys here, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, I think Belichick, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like he's going to be in love with this 2 tight end set. I feel like he's always been enamored by that, especially going back with Gronk and Hernandez. Not saying it's going to look the same. Obviously, going to be some different wrinkles to it. But I just think overall the offense is going to truly benefit from being tight end centric.
It better, the quarterback, it's all up to quarterback, and that's the thing. There's no more excuses this year of what kind of play they get. And, you'd think they were terrible in the red zone last year. You got, Jonnu Smith's great red zone threat, Hunter Henry, great size. So, on paper, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. It's just, again, as we said at the top, it just comes down to how's the quarterback going to perform.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Mike, here, just to conclude here, how do you see their 2021 season going? I know it's obviously very far, far away here, but do you believe they can get back into contending in 2021?
Contending for the Super Bowl? Maybe not, but contending for the AFC.
Playoff spot.
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, I think aside, let's leave the quarterback position out of it right now. I mean, they're a light years better team right now than they were. And they had some games last year that could have gone either way. So, I don't think that I'm, ready to say, oh, this is, and let's make sure we adjust for 17 game season here. 9, 10, 11 wins. I think, that's where you're aiming for if you get the good, quarterback play. But, I still think that they have some big questions. And, I think it starts like with those 2 positions in need, like we said, at tackle and cornerback, those are significant positions that if they get an injury there or, they don't have much depth right now, they could have some problems. So, like you said, it's definitely early. I think that they are absolutely a better team. I don't know what how much better Cam Newton can be. I do think he can be better and, be okay enough to keep them in games like he did for most of last year. But what's it going to take to get them back to that next level? I don't think Cam Newton can get them to that point. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to Cam Newton proving me wrong. I would love it if he does. But based on what I just saw last year, I just didn't see the progress. And I have to go by what I see, and that's what it was. So I know he'll bust his ass and work hard to try to get back on track. And I think he's got the pieces to do it. So, and the defense is always going to be pretty good. So hopefully they can get to third down, get off the field. And help to give Cam some opportunities, because let's face it, they're going to get takeaways. They're going to make big plays on special teams is what they do, and that enough will keep them hovering around 500.
Yeah,
I'm not saying this was. Oh, good.
You go, Peter.
No, I'm not saying this was an excuse though. Do you think COVID had any factor in Cam Newton? Because he was lighting the world on fire like the first 3 weeks. Not on fire, but
I mean, like what I saw was that against the Dolphins, they kind of sprung this on them, and the Dolphins were kind of like, "Oh, we didn't realize Cam Newton was going to run the ball," like, whoa. And so they kind of got away with it on that one. Then against the Seahawks, they got behind, and it was just like, hey, chuck and duck, and like, and he had a lot of yards, but I felt like it was catch up. It was like, we got to get it. And then Oakland, I thought it was kind of like, this is not progressing like it was, so I didn't really feel like, oh my God, it's going to the moon. But at the same time, it's like he missed like 10 days, it's not like that he didn't miss a month, so I know there's like, oh, the offense moved on without him, all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, I would have seen some kind of progress, and, there was progress in terms of turning the ball over. I mean, I think that was kind of low lighted when, they lost to Buffalo and they were, driving to win the game. I mean, maybe they go in, they win the game. So, I do think it's never going to help you to get derailed like that. And, I can't speak to the physical ailments of what he had, but I don't know. I don't put a ton of stock in it, other than I just put overall as like, this is the COVID season. There was a cloud hanging over it for everybody. You never felt 100% comfortable, like, media included, having to like go to practice. I mean, it was just a weird year. So I do think generally that, we all kind of had a little bit of a COVID excuse, but not like, oh, if Cam hadn't gotten COVID, the Patriots would have been in the playoffs. I don't really think that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, Cam Newton's work ethic, I don't think you can really deny that. He's obviously coming to New England ready to work, but look, the results haven't been there. He's 13-17 in his last 30 starts, 34th in the NFL in passing touchdowns, 28th in passer rating, 30th in QBR. Everybody knows that. Now, the question is, will he be better with better surrounding talent? I mean, you would think so, but I think what you mentioned, is his body going to hold up? He's going to be 32 years old, I think, within the next month. Again, like you mentioned, nobody really knows what's wrong. Is it his shoulder? Is it knee? He's obviously had both those worked on in the course of his career. But I think ultimately this Patriots team will fall short because of the quarterback play, unless for whatever reason they address it in the first round and, I don't know, Newton starts the first couple games and then you just give it to the rookie, or Garoppolo leaks free or something like that. But as long as Newton's under center, I just don't see this team necessarily competing for a Super Bowl or, I don't know, win the AFC Championship game, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I think, even we had Brady and we were smoking everybody. A lot of those AFC East games were surprisingly difficult. And I think that's always how divisional football kind of goes. So, in that regard, I think that they'll always, I don't think they're ever going to walk in and, I mean, granted, Buffalo did kind of have their way with them at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
But, considering who that team was and what they were putting out on the field, I have a hard time seeing the Patriots getting steamrolled in the AFC East. Now that, doesn't mean they're going to compete with the elite teams, but like even last year against Kansas City, like they kind of hung in for a little while, so, it's hard. I mean, I do think, like you said, though, after the draft, or, even after round one of the draft, that, something could happen. Maybe San Francisco said, hey, we just want to make sure we get our guy, and then we're done with Jimmy. So maybe that's still a possibility. I wouldn't totally rule something like that out, but yeah, I think this season just comes down to the quarterback position. And, I hope, even if it is another Cam Newton year, that at least somebody is hopefully, developing behind him, that we can kind of put a little bit of excitement behind.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be something, everyone thought, like we talked about earlier, Jarrett Stidham. Now, he obviously got hurt in camp and there was stuff surrounding that. But nonetheless, they need to address, they got to bring somebody in. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, you got two guys on the, I mean, the position is light. I mean, it's sitting right there for the taking. Nothing against Jake Dolegala, who was on the practice squad last year, but they need at least one more guy. I mean, hell, I draft two of them. I mean, it's so hard. It's the hardest position in sports to fill. And when you're stuck in the middle of the first round, it's just, there's no easy way to get up and get one of those guys. So, I think they'll be creative. I don't know. I really don't know how it's all going to unfold. And I don't think they do either. They're just, biding their time and going to see what shakes loose, kind of like Cam shook loose. But I just hope sooner or later they're going to luck into a quarterback of the future.
All right. Well, that's good. I think that's pretty accurate. I know it sounds kind of rough, like, well, whatever shakes loose, but it feels like that's just where we're at right now. Yeah.
I mean, welcome to the post Brady Patriots. It's it's not easy, but I hope they continue to throw things at the wall. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, there's so much talk of, you got to get a quarterback in the first round. You can't, I mean, it's like, yeah, but there's always an exception and, exception. So I just keep trying everything you can. I was a little bit disappointed last year that they didn't do more. Like, we got to that point where it's like, geez, are we really going into the season with Stidham and Hoyer? And then, and then they got Cam, but that was exciting. And, we all kind of had grand hopes of what that could mean. Reality didn't quite live up to that, but hopefully an opportunity presents itself. I think they understand that they need that quarterback to, truly get back to where they were.
And a big step could be in the draft next week. So Mike, what do you have coming in the next couple of weeks in your preparation for the NFL draft? What do you got coming forward?
Yeah, I just dropped the big board. I got it year 11, trying to pick 50 prospects, trying to get as many Patriots guys as I can. So that's always kind of the bulk of my draft work. So I published that last week. So now I'm just kind of cruising. We're recording some podcasts though, some positional previews with my colleague Paul Perillo for Patriots.com. And then on draft night, we'll be live on Patriots.com all the way through the first round and night 2 as well. And a couple hours on day 3. So I'm looking forward to it. It's always super fun. You never know what's going to happen, and the picks start rolling in, and it just all starts happening right before your eyes.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Mike. So you can find Mike's work at Patriots.com on Patriots Unfiltered. Mike's a great follow on Twitter as well. Mike, what's your handle?
Mike Dussault 19.
Mike Dussault 19.
I know, very basic.
That's all right. So Mike, thank you again for coming on, and let the NFL draft begin.
Thanks, guys.